Good afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of Since I Was Young, a podcast dedicated to all things Heart of Midlothian. This week saw the beginning of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, however the hottest ticket in town was that of the Hearts versus Aberdeen that took place at Tynecastle, the curtain raiser for the Scottish Premiership season. All that in the backdrop of the Tony Bloom one-man show, which rolled into Gorgie just a couple of days prior. Also, whilst battling gale force winds brought in from Storm Floris, it all certainly added up to a very, very exciting evening under the lights at Tynecastle. Certainly, anticipation was very, very high for events to unfold. So we will be touching on that, and also, of course, we'll be giving our thoughts on Tony Bloom and looking ahead to Dundee United fixture that follows this coming weekend. Over the next little period of time. I'm not going to set a time frame on it, but we'll certainly see how we go. But before we do get jumped in, folks, you can find all of our social links down in the video description. Please do consider heading across them all and dropping a subscribe and a follow, etc. And subscribe to the YouTube channel and find us on Spotify whilst you're over there as well. But with all that said and done, John, as I say, the curtain raiser took place on Monday evening. I don't know about you, I felt a bit like a kid, just waiting with anticipation, watching all the other teams play through the weekend and then waiting for our game on the Monday night. And then obviously we had the news of the storm that was incoming, high winds, which I'm not going to suggest put a bit of a possibility the game could have been called off. But certainly I'm very, very glad that it was just a passing storm, shall we say. And thankfully the game went ahead as planned, because I think if I'd had to sit through the weekend's games for our game to then be postponed, I don't know what I would have done with myself.
Yes, that's one way to look at it, Alan. The other way to look at it, though, is that the SPFL clearly knows who the main event are, because Heart of Midlothian put on a show on Monday night. You want to talk about a storm? Hearts have stormed the first part of the season, and the early signs in terms of the league campaign, very positive. Very tough team to come up against in the first day of the season. Great test. Obviously, it was going to be unlikely we were going to gub them 4-0 like we did everyone in the League Cup group phase, but convincing 2-0 win over Aberdeen. It wasn't always what you would call dominant, but it was a very strong performance, and it was night and day of difference than where we were a year ago.
Yeah, completely agree. And obviously, as I said in the intro there, obviously Tony Bloom was in town. He gave his 90 minutes with Tony Bloom. The Foundation of Hearts have been rolling out these events over the last few weeks and months. We had 90 minutes with Derek McInnes, which sold out in, I believe, 7 minutes. Tony Bloom's event sold out in 4 minutes, I do believe. So if you were one of the chosen few that managed to get a ticket to see it in person, well done you. But obviously the club realised the demand would be rather high, and they chose to stream it live on YouTube as well, which is where I managed to catch it. Before we kind of touch on Aberdeen, we'll just kind of rattle off a few sort of quick things about Tony Bloom. Of course, we've done an episode when the news broke that his involvement was coming into play. But obviously now it's all signed and sealed and official, and we're seeing the sort of results of that, certainly thus far, in terms of the recruitment drive and the tools that we're utilising to bring in the players this summer. I spoke to quite a few Brighton fans in particular about Tony Bloom, and they all, like, this was months ago when it was all kind of coming out, and they all sort of said you won't hear much from him. He's quite a private person, does his business in the background and isn't really one to enjoy being in front of a camera and sort of being the centre of attention, because he's just not that kind of person. And obviously the 90-minute event that he did was actually very good, and I think there was almost a level of sort of informal nature to it that kind of settled him a bit, I felt like. He came across really well, and that's before I even talk about what he actually said on the night. But I will say, rolling him out in front of the Sky cameras before the Aberdeen game was a bit, there was something about it just didn't quite sit right with me. But again, he handled himself reasonably well, but I think you could tell that he's not used to being that kind of front and centre, if you will. But in terms of what he came out with in the build up to the Aberdeen game. Obviously, they did the 90 minutes on the Sunday night, and then the game was on the Monday. He made some bullish claims, some very interesting ambitions, and rattled all the right cages with some of his quotes, which I very much enjoyed.
I'm with you on all of that, Alan. Yes, very intriguing remarks from Mr. Bloom as regards the state of Scottish football and how it has been for decades, quite frankly, my entire life, your entire life, has been dominated by two teams. And Tony Bloom is pretty adamant, much like a certain Mr. Romanov was 20 years ago, that that's going to change. Now, I don't necessarily feel like he was going as far as to predict out and out that we are going to win the league. What I feel he has made his mission is to disrupt Scottish football in general. He wants to see every club that's in Hearts' position start to challenge at that top end of the table. He sort of threw the gauntlet down to basically every rival of the old firm and said, "This is how it should be in football. It should be more competitive than a two-horse race." Obviously, he has a vested interest in us, and he is going to be actively backing us to do it. He seems quite confident that we can do it. He did place a 5 to 10 year period on it, though. He's not claiming that we're going to do it in the next 2-3 years. He's not. What was it Romanov predicted that we would win the Champions League within 5 years or 3 years?
Yeah,
Was it 3
I think
years
it was
or something
3
like that?
years. Yeah, I think it was 3 years. Yeah.
He's not
fun
making
times.
any kind of claims like that. In fact, he made a comment about that actually that I wondered if that was directed at Romanov back then, saying like, "Oh, obviously we want to any tournament that we're in, we want to be aiming to win it, and obviously when we get to the Champions League, that might be a bit more difficult." I'm quite happy to see someone invest in a Scottish club. I'm ecstatic that it's Hearts, and I'm quite excited to see where this takes us. He has a phenomenal track record. He has transformed basically every club that he's invested in. Brighton are one of the top sides in England. They're constantly in Europe now. Union St Gallois, they won the league. Even Como, who he's had some involvement with in Italy, they've shaken things up quite a bit. They've come from basically obscurity into like now top players want to go there. This guy has a phenomenal track record, and he has become a billionaire by hedging his bets, by predictions. So he is a guy who comes with quite a pedigree in that arena. What I do fear, and I guess it might partly be because of the Romanov stuff. I fear what might happen if he doesn't succeed. And there's every possibility in Scotland that he won't succeed because, Rangers and Celtic are so far ahead of every other club in Scotland that it's comical. Whether you think it's by design via corruption or whether it's just that they are that much better and work that much harder is for each individual to make up for themselves. But that's going to be a gargantuan task to even put a dent in that dominance. Last time Hearts tried it, we ended up almost dead in the water. It was not the kind of financial investment that Tony Bloom and his consortium are pumping into the club, obviously. But that will only go so far if we don't then progress. And he might run out of patience if we don't then go on to become progressively better. So I fear what might happen if we don't succeed in that timeline and to that level. He's suggesting minimum third every year and that we should be challenging for the title. He even said, I believe, just on Monday before the game that we have a chance to split the old firm this year. We would love to see it, but it's extremely unlikely. Even with the results of the weekend, it is not the done thing to get anywhere near Rangers or Celtic by May. So I want it to happen, but I feel like has he maybe been overly ambitious in some of the things he said?
I think that's the thing. I think you kind of nailed it. Nailed a lot of the points I was going to make about him as well. Like, it is coming across as ambitious. It is coming across as he talked about the disruption and he talked about wanting to disrupt Scottish football and shake it up a bit. And I get that. And what you say is absolutely spot on about even the club posted a thing and he did a little interview in the museum. The museum was the backdrop and he was sitting in there and he was talking about the the coefficient, like Scotland's coefficient points, and talking about how clubs need to improve to make that better so that it's easier for Scottish clubs to get into Europe, which is fair enough. I mean, I know this is a Hearts podcast, but we're sitting here in Celtic and Rangers. Celtic won the league, and yet they still have to play a qualifier to then get into the top table. So, that in itself is an extra obstacle that hopefully can be avoided in the future if clubs do raise the standards and raise their game effectively to help that happen. Because it can only be a good thing for Scottish football. But like from my point of view, Tony Bloom is, and I've kind of had a few, as I say, conversations on social medias about it over the last few days. He's an outsider looking in at Scottish football with fresh eyes and going, right, what's the problem here? Right, it's stagnated because these two sides are dominating it. And he even mentioned it being a one-horse race because Celtic are just that level above, which is true as well in terms of what they've won recently. And he's right. He's absolutely right. When you look at it at black and white levels like that, it's very easy to see. What you say, however, is important as well. It's easy to see it, and it's easy to say we want to come in and disrupt it. We want to, shake things up a little bit. But doing it is the proof is in the pudding of that. But I feel a bit like you in terms of the Romanov stuff, and I think we've been burnt before. I think that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. But Tony Bloom, and you said it yourself, this man is a billionaire. This man loves football. He got involved with Brighton, his hometown club, and he's transformed them, plus the other clubs that you mentioned as well. He knows football as a business. He knows what is needed. And I think having someone, even as a minority investor, a minority shareholder, which is what he is, and his man on the board, whose name escapes me, having that knowledge and having that person that can just be there just to have a little word or just say, actually, do you know what? If you want to do this, this is what you should do. And I think he referred to it as, he believes he can open doors for us that maybe were not open before. And that's something else that he brings to the table. It's exciting and it's refreshing. And it's certainly, as I say, it rattled a few cages, but I think, and again, this is easy for us to say because we're sitting here as Hearts fans and he's the man that's invested in Hearts. But if it were a rival saying, we want to go out and do this, we believe we can finish second or whatever, we as a rival fan base would say, it's nonsense. But like you pointed out, it's that shot in the arm of every team in Scottish football from somebody looking from the outside in saying, there's a problem and you can all help to make that better. So it'll be very, very interesting to see what happens. I think one of my main takeaways from it, you sort of touched on the time frames that he's putting on things. To say I will be very disappointed if in the next 10 years we haven't won at least one title, it shows he's in it for the long haul. And you're right about the fear if it fails. And there is always that fear because we're Hearts fans. Nothing's ever rosy and nothing's ever straightforward. But to hear him say that 10-year, that stuck with me. And I'm thinking, this guy, he believes in what he's saying. A lot of people say, it's nonsense, it's ambitious, it's delusional. Some people have even said. He is a very intelligent man, and he won't be saying these things just because he believes that's what Hearts fans want to hear. I genuinely got that impression. It's not just lip service. It's not just him coming out and saying, I've got you all eating out the palm of my hand because I'm saying we're going to win the league, etc. Obviously, listen, the Hearts fans that were in the Gorgie suite listening to him ended up serenading him at the end of the evening. Yeah. So he did have them eating out his hand. But what he says, there is logic in there and there is a game plan of how to do it. It's just executing that. And like you mentioned, all the external factors, the quote unquote conspiracies, etc. That's what we're going to be battling against, and media pressures as well, because we know if things start going really well, the media will start trying to tear it down, and that's something we're going to have to contend with. I'm sure Mr. Romanov had his thoughts on the media. I'm sure he called them media monkeys for quite a long time. So the same obstacles are still there, which is the issue that I would suggest that we have with it. But all in all, the Tony Bloom era obviously began under the lights of Tynecastle, as I mentioned. Visit of Aberdeen, the opening tie of the 2025-26 season. And I don't know about you, I was excited. I think with the words of Tony Bloom ringing in my ears, I felt like, everything's been good. Like pre-season's been good. The signings all look good, which is something that we'll touch on as we go along. The preparation's been good, the League Cup's been good, but this is the start. This is what has to happen now. And I think somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody referenced the atmosphere inside Tynecastle feeling like a European night.
Mm-hmm.
And that really pleased me. Obviously, I didn't manage to get to the game live, unfortunately, but hearing all the things that I heard and Derek McInnes talking about the fans needing to be there to drive the team to help it move forward, the fans turned up. The fans turned up and responded and put in what they were asked. And I think considering the conditions, like I mentioned, that's admirable as well that the fans decided to go along, because it could have been quite easy for a lot of them to say, do you know what, it's on the telly, I'll watch it in the pub and that. But obviously Hearts fans they turn up when they're called upon, and we certainly did. And to be fair, Aberdeen brought a decent crowd down with them, considering the level of travelling for them would have been 10 times more than what we had to do. But yeah, I was very, very excited and very optimistic about the game against Aberdeen. The team news was dropped and we were setting up with the back three. I'll get your thoughts on that shortly. I'm not a fan of a back three. I haven't been a fan of a back three, but I think I'm scarred, like you spoke about with Romanov in previous words. I think I'm scarred with having players shoehorned into a back three and not really being capable of actually playing it properly. Whereas I think now we have the personnel that can carry it out. And I felt comfortable with that. I felt comfortable when I saw the lineup. There were a few little surprises in there that I wasn't sure about. Christian Borkovic started, despite many people suggesting his legs had fallen off and we'd never see him again. But he played from the start. On that, I think Adam Forrester, there's probably some movement for him by the time this episode goes out. He may well have moved. There was a link with St Johnstone on a loan, which, again, we'll speak about as we go, but it just popped into my head when I'm talking about right-backs. There was also a place in the midfield for Blair Spittle alongside Cammy Devlin and Oisin McEntee. I've had my thoughts on Blair Spittle for quite a long time. I don't mind him as a football player, but I just don't think he's got the engine. So that was the surprising one for me. But we paired Shankland and Braga up front, and I think those two have that balance of being, Lawrence Shankland is a goal scorer. Braga is a hard worker. He presses, he harries, he does the running basically. And I was very, very pleased to see those two. But I think it's one of those, when we spoke about our predictions for the game in the previous episode, I didn't know what the lineup was going to be. I couldn't have predicted it because of the fact that we've got about a 50-man squad, but also we've seen multiple formations used throughout pre-season. So I didn't even know what shape we were going to go in. And we'll talk about Dundee United later, but that kind of carries into that game as well. But what did you have any thoughts about that sort of pre-game?
I'm not a fan of a back three, as you're well aware. I'm actually quite inflexible, you might say, when it comes to tactical systems that I have any time for. I feel that the style of football that Hearts are looking to play isn't really suited to that setup either. I do feel that a 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2 is far better suited to the kind of direct and high energy type of football that Derek McInnes is wanting to play. Blair Spittle starting was somewhat of a surprise to me. I don't feel that he's really shown much in pre-season or in the Premier Sports Cup that would warrant that start. Not sure what the issues were in terms of what options alternatively Derek McInnes had available. He might have, deployed them there for reasons that are known to Derek McInnes, but not to me. That's why he's manager of Heart of Midlothian and I'm not. Borchgrevink, I kind of agree with you on Borchgrevink. He was kind of a surprise because it seems like he's been struggling with injury since he got in the door. It's been a bit of a frustrating start for him, I think. Hopefully he can get healthy and stay healthy. Although his kind of recent history, even before he left Vallelanga, is not suggestive that these injury issues might go away anytime soon. He's injury prone seems to be the kind of label, and I hope that I'm wrong, but because he seems like a decent player when he's on the park, but you need to be on the park to show that. The Braga Shankland pairing up top, I think that will go places. The two of them look very comfortable together already. It seems like both of them have kind of their strengths and they play off each other very well and are able to accentuate their strengths together.
Yeah.
It does make me wonder where Cabangu and Wilson fit in potentially, because I do feel like Shankland Braga is the first choice pair.
Hmm.
But then you want to get Wilson some minutes. You also want Cabangu playing fairly regularly. How do you fit them in without
Yeah.
disrupting the chemistry between Shankland and Braga? It's going to be a really difficult one, I think, and that will be one of the things that defines, from a technical standpoint, like Derek McInnes' season as first season as Hearts manager, is how he rotates those strikers and keeps getting the best out of them while doing so. It's not an easy thing to do, as we both know from playing Football Manager for many years. If you leave a striker on the bench for too long, they can lose it. It's a use it or lose it type of position.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, but the back three that was deployed, I do feel that they did a particularly solid job.
Yeah.
Having just slagged off the back three as a system, they all three are very, they're experienced players. They seem to be getting on really well with each other. They seem to have a great understanding already at this early on. Stuart Findlay is just a fantastic pickup. It feels like to me, like
Yeah.
he's very quickly becoming one of my favourite Hearts players, because he's just kind of old school sort of, you know, if it's in the air, get it header to fuck, and
Yeah.
if it's on the ground, hoof it somewhere. He's very no nonsense, and I like that about him. I do
Yeah,
like a no
definitely.
nonsense defender.
For sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of my overall thoughts on the tactical side of things. It was an odd setup, but it worked out.
Yeah, and I think like to kind of just kick the game off, I think you could tell straight from the start. Obviously, the crowd was doing their part, and the players responded.
Yes.
There were some tackles flying in early on that were quite tasty, which got the Hearts fans on their feet, because of course we love a crunching tackle against an opposition player. It's usually Cammy Devlin that's doing them, and I think he was probably responsible for quite a few during the game. But we'll kind of skip to obviously the first goal that came in the first 10 minutes, which again has become somewhat of a hallmark of Hearts at the moment, scoring early when we're starting well, which is a big plus, because for a long time we've started games well and just failed to take a chance, and then obviously you leave yourself open, etc. But we got the
Yeah.
first goal thanks to Aberdeen captain, who was funnily enough celebrating his birthday on Monday evening, Graham Shinnie. He lost the ball prior to the goal. He was I think the last Aberdeen player that was involved, and he lost the ball, and it broke to Harry Milne after a bit of sort of pinball from memory. I think it was McKenty that had a header, and then it got brought back out and then recycled. And Harry Milne could have let the ball go out for a corner, because we all know how good we are at corners now. But he chose to play the ball across, and it was turned into the back of the net by, as I say, birthday boy Graham Shinnie. Um, just a
Nice wee finish.
Yeah, definitely. Aye, definitely. I would have been proud of that. But no, listen, it's that goal for me summed up quite a lot of, like you spoke about, the Derek McInnes way of playing and getting it forward and stuff. The first goal for me, albeit it was an own goal, we forced it by robbing Graham Shinnie of the ball, and then Cammy Devlin hits a shot and it's played forward. There's no get it back, recycle it, pass it sideways. It's nah, we're going forward. Oisin McKenty's in the box, makes a very good header. Quite unlucky that didn't go in. The goalkeeper made a good save from that. So it's about crowding that box and getting the ball in, and because carnage can happen in there and chaos can happen in there, and obviously it finds its way to Harry Milne. And like I said, he could have easily let it go out for a corner, but he chose to play it back across the box. And yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate for Shinnie. I'm not going to lie. Well, it's not unfortunate because he's an Aberdeen player, but um, from where he was in his position, it is what it is. But you're not going to get a goal like that if you just pass it sideways and recycle it and go again. It was about that intensity and that press of, we smell blood, we're going to try and get a goal here, and obviously
Yeah.
so it came to be.
Yeah, that was officially put down in the books as an own goal, but that goal was caused by Hearts' pressure. The pressure they put on Aberdeen early was overwhelming. And
Yeah,
if you keep that pressure up, and if you're always first to the ball when it breaks loose or when it gets cleared, if you're able to get on the end of every clearance, that kind of thing will happen if you're able to keep going and keep doing it. And if you take advantage when the moment arises, like Milne's low drive into the box was hit with pace. It was a very difficult ball to get anything on, and if you did get it on it, you kind of had to hope that you got it at in the right position, because like it just kind of like just bounces off his foot and just goes at quite a bit of pace and just ends up in the back of the net. It's not like it wasn't a case where he messed anything up or anything like that. He just kind of tried to block the ball, and it just came off his foot at pace and into the back of the net. You kind of saw it in his reaction of just like there's nothing that he could have really done about it. It was hit with such force. So, and that's what will happen more often than not if you keep up the pressure and you are always first to the ball.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And then
And
obviously,
if you focus on bringing the ball forward instead of sideways and back.
exactly. I think the next thing I have noted down was the Harry Milne shot that rattled the crossbar and post, albeit I
Yes.
think it was 3 minutes or so later, 3 or 4 minutes after the first goal. I love Harry Milne. I absolutely love the man. Like I just his story and everything, going from
Yeah.
working in a bar not that long ago to then playing and working his way up the Scottish football pyramid is it's quite a story. It really is, and he just comes across as a really honest and hardworking guy, and I think that's something that really struck with me. And that's before I even talk about his actual technical ability on the pitch, but you know I'm trotting out the same line as I said when we lost Cochrane and obviously signed Penrice, but we've lost Penrice and Harry Milne has stepped into that fold. He did an interview on Sky after the game where he spoke about it, and he kind of spoke in glowing terms about James Penrice and said, he was a great player to play net or to play alongside, and we helped each other, and he earned his move and all the rest of it. But he then made the point of saying, when I came to Hearts, I wanted to be the starting left back, and that was when James was still here, and James knew that, So they, by the sounds of it, they pushed each other on, and obviously that's probably raised Harry Milne's levels. And then he got in towards the end of last season when we started benching Penrice, and he's not looked back. He just looks like he's played for Hearts for a very long time, which is a really really positive thing. He just gets forward when he needs to and gets back when he's required to. He always just seems to be in the right position defensively and offensively for where he needs to be. Comes across as a bit of a manager's dream to manage him, I would imagine. And yeah, I thought, he was my man of the match against Aberdeen. I'm not going to lie. There were a few contenders, but he was certainly the man of the match for me, just for his energy and his work rate. But if that goal had gone in, you know, just wrap up goal of the season. Although Shanklin might have had it later on, he might have had something to say about that. But yeah, if the Harry Milne goal goes in, or if the Harry Milne shot goes in, yeah, it's ridiculous. But he's certainly proven to be a popular figure amongst the fan base.
Yes, thoroughly professional work is basically what we've seen from him. Like you mentioned there, he pushed Penrice to the point that Penrice got even better and then pushed him out the door, albeit to move on to bigger and better things, not like not. But then Milne has now stepped up. He waited for his opportunity for how long at this level, and like you say, he's worked his way up from nothing to the ASPL, and he has shown in a short sample size how well he fits this club. I think having, like I mentioned earlier, the experienced heads in the defence that we now have, the guys that we have are very reliable. That is probably a wing back's dream because they don't have to worry so much because they know that they're covered. He's very good though when it comes to tracking back and the positioning side of things, like you just mentioned. He's been a revelation. Who was talking about Harry Milne? A few months ago when the season ended, and yet he looks early on like he could be one of our key players this year.
Well, even in January, I won't. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I won't go on about Harry Milne too much. But even when we signed him in January, there were a lot of people going, "Why are we bringing this guy in? Why are we bringing a lad in from Partick? Like, what's he doing?" Like, it was a very unassuming, uninspiring signing. But yeah, it's just the impact that he's had is ridiculous. Sorry. Anyway, you crack on. I thought you were going to say something.
Yeah, no. I was just going to finish up by saying words to that effect. When he came in January, I was thinking could be a useful backup. That was essentially my thoughts on it. But he's proven himself to be more than capable of stepping up and stepping into Penrice's role.
Yeah, definitely. And then there were a few chances back and forward in the first half. It was mostly from ourselves. We certainly looked the fitter of the two sides and probably the better prepared of the two sides. And I would I would argue the more complete of the two sides. I do think Aberdeen are probably still a few players short in terms of positions that they need. Certainly, a striker would be high on my list of priorities if I was high up in Aberdeen's recruitment model. But we had Lauren Shankland, I mentioned it there, hitting an absolute raker of a shot into the top corner. And obviously, Hearts fans went mental because that's what we do when Lauren Shankland scores an absolute worldie. Lauren Shankland doesn't tend to celebrate goals. I've noticed that, and it's something that I know riles a few people up a little bit, that he doesn't jump about like Ryan McGowan scoring from a yard, but he's got his own way of doing things, and he doesn't tend to celebrate too much unless it's against certain teams. Then he loves to celebrate, but he hits this absolute rocket into the top corner and gets mobbed by his teammates, and the Sky cameras catch him quite quickly saying, "Halkett's offside. Halks is offside." So he knows it's offside, and Frankie Kent goes up and gives him a cuddle and, congratulates him on the goal. And then you can see Shankland saying it's offside, and Kent's face just drops. He's like, what the fuck? Like, that's a brilliant goal, and it's been chalked off because of an offside. Yeah. Unfortunately, the correct call, Halkett was offside in the second phase of the build-up for the goal, unfortunately. The fact that Craig Halkett was that far forward, I was like, it's from open play as well. I was like, the man's getting a nosebleed. Like, he doesn't know the offside rule from an attacking sense. He's better at defending it, but he's not great at in the opposition box.
Yeah. It reminds me of that time that Christoph Berra ended up on the left wing for a bit. Remember that day? I think it was during the championship season back in 2020. He started bombing it up and down the left wing. Was it either the semi-final or the final of the Scottish Cup that year?
I'm sure it
and
was.
At one point, he ended up on the left wing, and it was like, what the hell are you doing out there, man? Like, behave yourself.
If there was a point later in the game where Stuart Finlay was on the left wing, do you mind that? And he whipped across into the box. That gave me flashbacks to that as well. But I was gutted, absolutely gutted for Shankland though. It's a brilliant goal, and it's the sort of goal that Shankland can score. One of those goals out of nothing. He just picks it up and just thinks, "Sod it, I'm hitting it." Mm-hmm. It's a brilliant strike. But
the offside notwithstanding, though, and sorry to interrupt there, but like offside notwithstanding, it's yet another brilliant indicator. It's like another wee kind of taste of like what we might be getting with Shankland this year. The fact that he's walloping them in from distance with confidence, that just fills me with so much optimism. And I might have to revise my prediction last week, because if he can keep banging them in from that kind of distance and because he's keeping keepers guessing that way, like you don't know where a Shankland curler might come from. He might well hit that 100 this year if he can score with regularity. He's been unlucky on this occasion that Halkett decided to maraud into parts unknown at his dinner table. But just great encouraging signs once again from the captain.
Yeah, and then obviously the half-time whistle, it was obviously 1-0 to Hearts, and we went off the goal coming the disallowed goal coming just before half-time. At half-time, I was sitting there thinking, this game looks like it's ours, but knowing Hearts, like we spoke about with Tony Bloom, like we've spoken about before, we've seen that story before, where we go 1-0 up, or we're sitting at 0-0 at half-time, and then it peters out and we drop points. So that was the little voice in the back of my head that was thinking, this could happen again. But we made some changes in the second half. We changed to a back four. And my point, we made 4 subs, I think it was, all in one go. And this is something that I've spoken with a few people about. I think the 5 subs rule is finally something that we can actually utilise confidently. I spoke to somebody earlier on today, and we're talking about like the bench that Hearts have assembled is good, and not just that. It's every player has a different profile on that bench to what's starting. Like the club obviously announced Pierre Landry Kabore today, finally, after about a month of waiting. But he comes in as another striker option, but he can also play across the wings. Kaiseridis can play left wing or right wing. Obviously, there's Forestino still there, still hanging on. He's still allowed in the dressing room at the moment until such time as he perhaps may well be out the door. But at the moment, he's still got a place in the dressing room and still has a place in my heart.
Alan, Forrest got on Monday.
He did. Yeah,
Elton Kabangu didn't get on. Elton Kabangu wasn't on.
But this is my point, and I think, sorry, I kind of deviated a little bit there, but as is my love for Alan Forrest, it tends to, send me down a different road. But
more power to you. We need to. We
but
need. We need. We need
the
to. We need
fact
to
that
get our boys' backs.
the fact that we were able to bring on 4 players and they all came on
Yeah.
and made a difference. You know, the 5 subs rule, before I went on my tangent, Celtic and Rangers have been utilising that 5 subs rule since it's come in. And Celtic have game changers on their bench that they can bring on when they're perhaps not playing particularly well. They can bring guys on to turn a game for them. Rangers can do it. We have never been able to do that because a lot of the time I've looked at our bench options and you're thinking there's a couple of guys on there that are similar in terms of profile to the players that are on the pitch. It would be like for like subs. It's not going to be upgrades. It's not going to be, able to change a system or change a game. Now it feels like, at least early days, of course, it's one game, but the subs all came on, the system changed. We went to a back four. Oshie McKenty and Cammy Devlin were the midfield two, and I thought that was when McKenty really came into the game. I thought he did well in the three in the middle, but when he was in that midfield two with Devlin, it was almost like he took Cammy Devlin's lead off him and just let him run and was like, right, I'll do the dirty work, I'll do the mopping up, but I will bomb forward and help you when I can. But it kind of unlocked Oshie McKenty as well, which was great to see. Another player I was very impressed with. I think he's got all the attributes to be a hit at this level. But back to my point, having subs able to come on and make a difference like they did is massive.
100%. Yeah, like you say, Celtic and Rangers have won trophies. I think in large part due to their depth and their ability to go to the subs bench and their ability to exploit the five. There's only one club in this country that's able to turn to an 8, 10, 12 million pound rated attacking player off the bench, and that's Celtic. And they happen to win pretty much everything. It's not a coincidence.
No.
Squad depth wins trophies, especially if you're playing on several fronts. So if we want to get back into Europe, then we really need to have that kind of depth in the bench as well. We've seen it undo as in Europe the last couple of years, and by extension in the league. Even a couple of years ago when we finished in third place, we were pretty terrible for the first part of the season until we were out of Europe because we didn't have the depth to play Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, Thursday.
Yep,
now we
definitely.
have that wee bit extra depth on the bench, and we're starting to see from the small sample size that we've seen rewards from that already. Like, we have not been beaten in a competitive match so far. And we've played a few games, we haven't even dropped
Yeah.
any points, and there's plenty of banana skins amongst that lot. None more so than Aberdeen, who are still, let's remember, a pretty top club. Like, when they're at their best, they're still fantastic. Look at the way they started last year. Granted, the wheels came off the cart, but they're still capable of beating anyone in this league.
Oh, definitely, definitely, and I think that's the thing. Like I sort of touched on it a little bit earlier there with Aberdeen. They look a little bit short. Certainly up front, the lad Yengi that they've got, he missed a few big chances that
Yeah,
a player that's maybe a little bit more up to speed or maybe a little bit sharper would have put them away. I look at our forwards, for example.
yeah.
That ball falls to Claudio Braga, he's putting that in the net. That ball falls to Lawrence Shankland, he's putting it in the net. There was one that just happened to hit off him and he didn't really know anything about it and it hit the post. And he had one in the second half that was a cross that came in and he had a headed opportunity that he completely splaffed and missed it. That little bit of sharpness is perhaps just not quite there yet, but I do feel like Aberdeen, they've done some business. They've brought in some players and there were a couple of them that were on display, but I feel like they are a couple of players light, and I think we got them at a good time. Albeit Tynecastle, Aberdeen, the Aberdeen Hearts fixture is always the home side. It's always been the home side that usually comes out with a win. But yeah, I maybe expected a little bit more from Aberdeen, but I think our general fitness levels and our preparation has perhaps been better than that of Aberdeen. And like I say, the fact that we caught them nice and early. But yeah, it was obviously the second goal that came courtesy of Big Stu Finlay, who is, like you said, slowly becoming one of your favourites. Everybody that listens to this podcast will know that I have been craving for a centre half to know how to attack a ball in the opposition box. Frankie Kent and his 50 pence head, Craig Halkett and his cheese string hamstrings. We have not had a centre half that can consistently. Kai Rolls, another one that did not know how to attack a ball in a box. Like if you launch the ball at them when they're standing in their own box, like you said earlier, they'll hoof it, they'll get rid of it. But Stuart Finlay is brave as anything, and I've set you off with that. But yeah, listen, Stuart Finlay, big fan, big fan.
Oh,
Fantastic ball in as well. He just puts his head where nobody else really wants to go. I don't know what the Aberdeen goalkeeper was trying to do. I think he was just trying to give him a cuddle or something. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
He
that
came out,
was. I don't.
came out and did a
I.
he did a star jump, and Stuart Finlay just put it over his head and said, "Thanks very much. We'll keep the 3
Yeah,
points in Gorgie." I very
he was
much
trying to
enjoyed
do
the
the. He
fact.
was trying to do the crab. It was
It's
a
true.
really bizarre attempt at goalkeeping. I have no idea what
Yeah,
he was doing. He sclaffed at it big time. Big
I
Stuart
like the.
Finlay, mate, are just terrified the shit out of him, to be honest. Because like that
You're
boy
not wrong.
is willing. The boy is willing to go up for a header
Yeah,
against anybody under any circumstances. He's just not. He's not. Has absolutely no fear.
no, and
He's that
that's
old
that's the
school. He's an
thing.
old school centre half. Like he just doesn't give a fuck. He goes up for that header and he's winning that header. And if you go down,
Absolutely.
that's your problem, and
Well, he
that's
got he got
terrifying.
wiped out. He got wiped out by the goalkeeper, and he's lying on the floor, and
Yeah,
all the boys are like, all the Hearts players are tapping him on the chest and obviously congratulating him for the goal. And you're thinking, is he all right? Like he's lying on the floor,
yeah.
and he jumps up and gives it the fist bump, and you're like, right, brilliant, he's fine, and he scored a goal and 3 points secured. Second half, as I say, I've kind of skipped over a lot of it because the first half was really the sort of, I don't want to call it blockbuster, but the first half was far better than the second was, and I think Derek McInnes will sit down the players and make them watch that second half. But he did make a comment where he said, "I liked the fact that we didn't play last 5 minute football," which is something that I really enjoyed hearing because it's kind of like we didn't just sit on the 1-0. We didn't allow ourselves to just sit on the 1-0. We were trying to get that second goal. We brought the players on to try and do it. We changed the system, changed the shape.
Yeah.
Kizaridis came on and was very, very good as well. I didn't mention him earlier, but he was one of the players that I had noted for his little cameo. Obviously, before the full time whistle, we saw the tiniest of tiny cameos from our new Icelandic midfielder Magnussen, Thomas Bent Magnussen, who featured off the bench. He basically got to run on, get clapped on by the supporters, and then it was full time. But it's nice to see a headband back at Tynecastle. We've missed one for a long time since dear old Peter Haring departed. But yeah, he looks like he could be an interesting prospect, but perhaps maybe one that's more sort of a longer term project at 22 years old. There's an element of that. I mentioned at the start and throughout that obviously Pierre-Landry Cabori has finally landed as a Hearts player and been unveiled today on day of recording. Day of recording, apologies. We've waited a long time for Pierre-Landry Cabori. McInnes has waited a long time for him. McInnes has repeatedly said, I wanted him to play in the closed doors game against Dundee. That didn't happen because we didn't have the paperwork. I wanted him to play against Aberdeen. Wasn't able to feature because we don't have the paperwork. Will he feature against Dundee United? And that is what we will talk about next. The Dundee United fixture, the next game.
He's
Sorry,
gonna
my
he's
voice
gonna
is gone.
he's gonna be passionate.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? We've waited 4 weeks for this man. He's been in the
Yeah,
country for a long, long time, and
I feel like that. Those are always the worst ones. The ones that are like, do you remember João Oshiniba, the big deal that we made out of him? And
oh
it
god,
was that took a long time to go through as well.
oh
And we did
jeez,
the whole
don't.
thing on the pitch of you welcome to Hearts, and then he started his first game and he was utter dross. Um, I just he's
Oh,
going to be shit. He's just not going to be very good, is
nah, he's
he?
gonna have some. He's gonna have some brilliant songs, though. The possibilities are endless. The Amore, Kabore.
That's
There's
Kabore.
lots.
Yeah,
There's plenty of opportunities for that, and I'm sure that the Gorgie Ultras will be on that as we speak, writing the songbook out. The only disappointment was we didn't hear the Claudio Braga song during the game against Aberdeen, so that was a bit disappointing. But on the Dundee United fixture, I'm not going to kind of waffle on too much about it because I mentioned earlier we've got a squad of about 50 men, so I have no idea what Derek McInnes is going to do. Dundee United feature in Europe on Thursday evening, and then we take them on Sunday. Hopefully, there's an element of tired legs heading into that game for them because I think that'll be a big benefit for us. I haven't seen much of Dundee United this season so far, if I'm honest with you, but their new recruits all seem to be about 7 feet tall from what I've seen. So it could be a physical battle, and I think this game And as much as the Aberdeen tie represented quite a challenge for us because they're a big, they're going to be a rival to us this season, you would imagine. I think Dundee United away is a big tester of a Derek McInnes Hearts. I think this is a game that we have slipped up previously. We have had some questionable results and some questionable performances. This is a big chance. This is a big challenge for this Derek McInnes side. And I have confidence. Again, this is like my tagline when we're doing predictions and such, but I'm as confident as I'm going to allow myself to be. I'm saying that again because I just don't know. But yeah, I think we'll learn a lot about a Derek McInnes Hearts side based off of the game at Tannadice. What's your thoughts?
I think games like this are the type of games that are the reason we went to Derek McInnes as Hearts manager. If there's any manager around that was available to succeed Neil Critchley permanently, that was knowledgeable and knew what it takes to go to a Tannadice Park, or so many other away grounds in this country and win, it's Derek McInnes. If there's a manager who is committed to a style of play that gives you the best chance of doing that against big physical, scrappy teams away from home, it's Derek McInnes. So this, like you say, is going to be a massive test. But I think it's also the first example of the type of matches that he can bring something to that we haven't necessarily seen from coaches in the past few years, because we've had a mixture of inexperience, stubbornness, and guys who don't know the league too well in the last kind of 3 permanent head coaches. Now we've got a guy who knows the league and who is very experienced and who has shown already a willingness and an ability to adapt the system. And like you say, he's got a massive squad at his disposal. So I trust that I trust that he's going to get it right, because he's gotten it right every time so far. So I'm going to bet on McInnes until it stops working, quite frankly, because he's doing pretty well.
Totally fair. Have you got a prediction at all for us?
3-1 Hearts.
Oof, 3 goals away from home. I like it.
I think Shanklin scores 2.
Okay.
And I'm going to say Harry Milne scores.
I could get behind that. Maybe another raker from 30 yards out actually goes in this time from Harry Milne. I am going to go for a 2-1 win for Hearts. I think it'll be tough. I think it's going to be a difficult game. But like I say, that factor of the European tie for Dundee United and the travel that's involved in that, I'm pretty sure they're away from home. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're away from home. That could play into our hands a little bit. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to Hearts. Before we wrap up, folks, obviously there will be the usual polls on the socials for you to give us your result predictions based off of the Aberdeen one that I posted up the other day. Our viewer base and our listener base across the social medias, they know what they're talking about, because Hearts to win was 81% of the votes. There was a 2% for a draw, and the 17% that voted for Aberdeen to win, I'm assuming, are imposters that have found my profile and decided to try and unbalance the vote. But yeah, there will be a
your Aberdeen
poll.
Supporting family have been active, I think, Alan.
To be fair, could very well be the case. But there will be polls active on the social channels when this episode goes live. In fact, I'll probably put them up before the episode goes live in order to get some more people on there. But yeah, head across to them and let us know your predictions for the Dundee United fixture. And whilst you're there, whilst you're doing all that, drop us a comment, tell us what you think of this week's episode and the beginning of the Derek McInnes era at Hearts, at least in a competitive league standpoint. What do you think of Tony Bloom's comments? How excited are you for the future? Do you think that 10-year promise, I'm not going to call it a promise, but that 10-year comment, is it doable? Could it be done? Are we here to disrupt and take over? Who knows, but time will tell. But before we wrap up, guys, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and thank you as ever to you, John, for your input and your contributions.
Thank you, man. Like I say, reasons to be optimistic. Two things very quickly make me optimistic about Tony Bloom in particular. One, his track record, and two, the fact he said it out loud. Like you said earlier, doesn't really talk much, but he said it out loud. It felt like a mission statement.
It did.
And then we went and beat Aberdeen, who are a top Scottish team, 2-0 at home. So Reasons to be cheerful.
It very much did. As I say, the tagline of disruption is certainly something that is going to be, I think, a real pointer for us in the coming weeks and months and years ahead. But as I said, folks, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Let us know your thoughts on this week and your predictions for Dundee United down in the comments, and drop a subscribe on the YouTube channel whilst you're there. Any support would be massively appreciated. But I'll leave it there for this evening, and bye for now.